That's okay though. For being so young, you're very, very smart. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So keep up the good work, man, and stay flat, okay?
Okay, I'm a flat earther. I'm a flat earther, flat earther, flat earther, flat earther, flat earther, flat earther. I'm a flat earther, flat earther, flat earther, flat earther, flat earther, flat earther. I'm a flat earther, flat earther, flat earther, flat earther, flat earther, flat earther. I'm a flat earther, flat earther, flat earther, flat earther, flat earther, flat earther.
You haven't heard us? Okay, you know what is so funny? It's good that you didn't hear that, because the whole time we were just saying that Jack's having connection issues and and his sound isn't working. So he's rebooting his modem so that we can get started. Oh, I'm so sorry. Tech issues abound today, you guys. Should be hearing me now, though, right? First, I was messing with the scenes trying to fix Jack's camera in the little box, and then I switched scenes automatically, and then I accidentally stopped the intro song, which I didn't mean to do. And then, yeah, then we sat here having problems, and you couldn't hear us talking about having problems. Anyway, I'll start over now. Shabbat Shalom. Welcome to Anti-Religious Scripture Study, Episode 6 with Karen B. and Just Jack, where the Adjustment Bureau likes to give us all kinds of problems and make everything extremely difficult for us. So, as soon as Jack is done rebooting, he will rejoin the call, and we'll get started with Anti-Religious Scripture Study. And today we get to talk about the Tower of Babel. Yeah. The sound's back now. I see the thing bouncing, and I know exactly what I did wrong. I'm sorry, you guys. Anyways, all right. Since Jack is rebooting still, while we're waiting for Jack, I will say hello to everybody in chat. Brian Parker, Matt Prince, Collie Candle, Doc Michael, Tyler Reynolds, Jay Johnson, RT, Milkman 710, Young Love 4020. Let me go. Captain Mojo, The Real. Yes, no audio. Sorry, you guys. Tyler Reynolds. Carrie Skates. Thanks for being here, you guys. Sue Finelli. Yeah, I'm sorry, you guys. Annie D, hello. Yeah, okay. So last week, let me pull up eSword. Last week, we were talking about, I think it was the flood, and then after the flood, and yes, well, and then we kind of skimmed through nations descended from Noah, all of the, this is basically the bloodline. That's kind of the last thing we looked at. And before that, well, it's funny how Genesis 9:1 doesn't have a title. I didn't notice that before. So the flood subsides. So, yeah, that's where we ended up last time, where we finished off. And so now we are starting here at the Tower of Babel, Genesis 11:1. And go look at that, it's an angel number too. Gravy boat ride, yeah. All right, here comes Jack. Hello.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Is the connection any better, as far as you know?
Well, so far, so good.
Okay. So I assume we're still live?
Yes, we're still live.
Okay.
I was just saying hi to everybody in the chat, and
turning my video off, just to be sure.
Alrighty.
Alright, so I'm going to read the disclaimer. To the religious, if you believe it's wrong to study scripture outside of your religion or denomination, if you believe your religious leaders or church fathers are incapable of having inherited anti-scriptural traditions of men, if you've already made up your mind about the scriptures, including the scriptures should not be studied at all, then this stream is not for you. To others, if you're open-minded to others' opinions, if you haven't made up your mind about the scripture, if you've been turned off to religion but believe there's truth in scripture that might have been changed or hidden by religion, if you live according to scripture and you want to dig in and discover more, this stream is for you. We are looking at scripture in the original language using concordances or dictionaries for root words as well as context from a non-religious perspective, as well as life experience discussion. We are not here to argue with others about theology or doctrine by the traditions of men, including Catholicism, Christianity, or Judaism. We will be discussing the importance of origins to show that the religions are contrary to Scripture. I changed it up a little on the end because I read it wrong, but that's okay.
All right.
All right. So we're in Genesis 11.
That's right. Genesis 11. The Tower of Babel. Babel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or Babel, but same thing.
Babel.
Babel, Babel, whatever. Which is confusion. And even the way that we pronounce it is confusion, right? Because It's been anglicized.
All right. Shall we begin?
Feel free.
All right. Genesis 11:1. And all the earth, or Eretz, all the Eretz had one language and one speech.
Yes.
And it came to be, as they set out from the east, that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. So Shinar is saying earlier name for Babel.
It was the land of Shinar. Kind of like it's like a valley, so it's a cleft of the mountains, aka a valley. So it's the land called Shinar, and Babel would be a city.
Shinar, a plain in Babylon.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they added that little note there themselves. Like, this is what, Babel used to be called, is Shinar.
Okay.
But it's just the land.
Okay.
And just to throw this out here, it's, which it does have the proper footnote on this, language is lip. They have the same lip.
Lip. Okay. And they said to each other, "Come, let us make bricks and bake them thoroughly." And they had brick for stone, and they had asphalt for mortar.
Right. So asphalt is kind of it's not necessarily asphalt. It's a bubbling, frothy thing. So, like, it even says, like, when you have the early stages of wine and you get that froth on the top, it's the same word. And the bricks, the bricks are described as a whiting or bricking. We will be bricking.
Wonder white. Why does it say white?
If you read the the ancient Hebrew, it kind of gets into it a little bit, as the color of the color of the bricks tended to be white. So
that's funny because all them old buildings have white bricks.
Right.
All the big megalithic looking buildings.
Yeah, it doesn't say exactly what these bricks were made of either, which is interesting.
That's weird. Moon. Huh. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, similar to the color of the moon, right?
Right. Okay. And they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower whose top is in the heavens," or in the Shemayim,
right,
"and make a name for ourselves, lest we be scattered all over the face of the Eretz."
Now, this is interesting because, we've been told this story that they're building this tower to heaven to challenge the Creator, but it's specifically for them to make a name for themselves. And why this is important is, like, when we talk about how they've replaced the name of the Creator and just put the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
This name thing is not just about it's not just about your name. It's about a identifier of who you are, what you are. Like, it's your authority. It's your stasis, if you will. So when they're saying make a name for ourselves, it's like let us be the name, like let us be the deity of the land. So it's more than just them trying to have a tower going to heaven. This is also carried on through the groups, the unnamed groups that think that they collectively are a deity to stand against the creator. You know, these secret societies and whatnot.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And it's, you know, they're of one mind and one accord, you know, type of scenario. People that went to church will, you know the term one mind, one accord, which is repeated in Acts chapter 2. So.
Okay. And I'd just like to point out this little definition here. As well as to the higher ether where the celestial bodies revolve.
You can't say that. It's outer space, don't you know?
All right.
So they revolve. So like they're not stationary while the Earth revolves? Huh.
Yeah, right? Okay. Then Jehovah came down to see the city and the tower which the sons of men had built. And Jehovah said, "Look, they are one people, and they all have one language, and this is what they begin to do. And now they are not going to be withheld from doing whatever they plan to do."
Right. So this seems to be more than just building a building. You know, whatever they're doing, they're messing with creation. You know, they're not being withheld from anything. So this is like, you know, it's not so much about the building, you know, although it's part of it, but whatever they're doing while building this building, this collection of people that they're creating is, you know, coming to be something that goes against the creator. I'd like for you to go back to verse 4 and look at the word for city and the root of it. City is, city, it has the same root word as darkness.
Okay.
And a lot of people who start getting into truth, whether it be Torah or just flat earth or just some other kind of truth, there's something that is inherent in us where we're like, you know what, cities are a bad idea. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, city, a place guarded by waking or watch in the widest sense. Encampment. Okay, so I click on this.
Yeah, you must be looking at the surface definition.
The primitive root, it says through the idea of opening the eyes to wake.
Yeah, keep going.
5-7. Okay, so then we go down to the last one. Primitive root, to be made naked. Be made naked.
All right, let's go back, click on the number again, and then go to ancient Hebrew.
Okay.
Rather than the Christian philosophy translations.
Okay, here now it says dark city.
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Like,
The
I don't know
pictograph
why.
is a picture of a rope with the extended meaning of darkness. There's a picture of a man. Combined means dark man or an enemy, jungle.
Yeah, it's mingled with darkness. Like the word for, you know, how we talked about evening is not actually evening. It's mingled with darkness.
Mm-hmm.
So it's that same root. So that mingling with darkness is what a city entails, because, you know, when you have, well, I'm sure everybody knows, like if you're living out in the sticks, you know, living out away from the city,
Mm-hmm.
it's a completely different environment than when you get in the city, as, you know, the population is condensed and, you know, people are dog eat dog, so to speak.
Yeah.
You know, everybody's fighting to get ahead, and it's a status building environment. So
Wow.
yeah.
Right here it says city, a dark and wicked place.
Yep. And so if you think about, like, before this, there was no mention of any descendants from, was it Seth? Is his firstborn after Havel? So after Seth, there was no established in that lineage about cities. But if you go back to Cain and his lineage built cities. Right? Cain was the one who was cursed, who was shaking and nodding, you know. They're the lineage that built cities.
All right.
Just some perspective there. All right, we're 17.
Yeah, we were 7, because then he says it will not be withheld from doing whatever they plan to do. Right. Come, let us go there and confuse their language, so they do not understand one another's speech. And Jehovah scattered them from there over the face of all the earth, and they left off building the city.
Right. So this is not just stopping building the building. This is stopping building the city. So I have a perspective, this is just Jack now. I have a perspective of, you know, these cities that have the same patterns. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of us have looked into the possibility that they were using it for energy collection, etc. So when the languages were scattered, that knowledge was still in them. So all these different nations that built these cities weren't necessarily a unified nation of communication, but the remnants of what was left over from Babylon. So that knowledge was still there, but they had no way to communicate with each other to create these cities. And so these cities were created in different nations because they revived it as the population grew. And so they're like, well, let's go back to what we know. You know, there's this way to harness water and energy and all this other stuff.
That makes sense.
So it's the ancient knowledge before Babylon was scattered. But then as it returned, like, it was all about, you know, cities and nations and all these things that exist today are not about collecting the power of nature, but the power of man. Right. So they're like, so they can lord over one another.
Yes.
And then it, you know, that's the invention of war and so on.
Wow. Yeah. That's crazy.
I'm just saying, like it's, for instance, like the sun god worship, right? The sun god worship is throughout all the different cultures, and they all have the same agreement, you know, and it's based on the sun cycle, but they all have the same agreement that, like, the sun dies for the winter solstice and then is reincarnated, right? So that right there shows you that it all has an original source of story. It's just like the story of, you know, the Ark, which we had last week, that is internationally throughout all the nations. Right. And it's because, you know, originally they were all of one lip. They all had the same story to tell. But then as the languages were scattered, the names were changed, a little bit of details were changed, just like when you play telephone, you know, and all the roots of it still comes from this original story in Genesis.
Well, that's interesting thought. Can't rule it out.
Yep. Yeah,
right.
And it does say that he's there to scatter them. You know?
Yeah.
And it also says, if you look at the lip of, hold on 7, verse 7, the lip of one another is actually the lip of a friend. Just throwing that out there.
Okay. That is why its name was called Babel, because there Jehovah confused the language of all the Eretz, and from there Jehovah scattered them over the face of all the earth. So
right. And Babel is to flow to mixture into nothing, so it dilutes it. And I think it at the base it says confusion or something like that.
Yeah, from confusion, Babel, that is Babylon, including Babylonia and the Babylonian Empire.
Yes. And also, it gets even more confusing because as Babylon continued to exist after that, they became Chaldee, or if you've ever heard of Chaldean.
Uh-huh.
Chaldean and Babylonian is the same thing. But that's coming up, so
Okay.
just FYI. But when they refer back to that incident, they call that Babel. And by extension, Babylon. So then it shortly gets into the generations.
Okay.
Did you read verse 9?
I did. I just read
Okay.
it.
All right, I'll pull up. I'll read through the generations if you'd like,
Sure.
just to get through them quick. All right, so these are the generations of Shem, which I said, Shem. These are the generations of Shem. Shem was 100 years old and brought forth Arpachshad after 2 years after the flood. And after he brought forth Arpachshad, Shem lived 500 years and brought forth sons and daughters. So they didn't stop living to be only 120.
Mm-hmm.
Just throwing that out there. Arpachshad lived 35 years and brought forth Shelah. And after he brought forth Shelah, Arpachshad lived 403 years and brought forth sons and daughters. Now, in the earlier generations thing, it said, therefore he lived this many years. So this one, it doesn't include that. And Shelah lived 30 years and brought forth Ever. And after he brought forth Ever, Shelah lived 403 years and brought forth sons and daughters. And Ever lived 34 years after he brought forth Peleg. And after he brought forth Peleg, Ever lived 430 years and brought forth sons and daughters. And Peleg lived 30 years and brought forth Reu. And after he brought forth Reu, Peleg lived 209 years and brought forth sons and daughters. And Reu lived 32 years and brought forth Sherug. And after he brought forth Sherug, Reu lived 207 years and brought forth sons and daughters. And Serug lived 30 years and brought forth Nahor. And after he brought forth Nahor, Serug lived 200 years and brought forth sons and daughters. And Nahor lived 29 years and he brought forth Terach. Okay. And after he brought forth Terach, Nahor lived to be 109 years and brought forth sons and daughters. And Terach lived 70 years and brought forth Avram, Nahor, and Haran. And these are the generations of Terach. Terach brought forth Avram, Nahor, and Haran. And Haran brought forth Lot, later called Lot, in our translation, but it's Lot.
Mm-hmm.
And Haran lived before his father Terach in the land of his birth in Kasdim. So this is talking about how Lot is Avram's nephew. And Avram and Nahor took wives. The name of Avram's wife was Sarai, and the name of Nahor's wife Milcah, and the daughter of Haran, the father of Milcah, and the father of Yiscah. And Sarai was barren, and she had no child. And Terach took his son Avram and his son Lot, son of Haran, and his daughter-in-law Sarai, his son Avram's wife, and they went out with them from Kasdim. So Kasdim is actually two words. So it's the city of and the city of Kasdim, to go to the land of Canaan. And there they came to Haran and dwelt there. And if you see, Haran was a name, but now Haran is the name of the city. Now this is where it gets really technical about history and timelines and stuff. At the time that they went to the city, it wasn't called Haran, because the name of the city was named after this family who moved there. So at the time that Moshe was writing this down, the city was established as Haran. Because if you look just a few verses back, you hear who Haran is.
Right.
Do you understand what I'm saying? Okay.
Yeah. Because here...
And people get that confused, like, oh, what a coincidence that he went to a city with the same name. No. it was named after that person. So the days of Terah came to be 205 years, and Terah died in Haran. And now we're going to go to chapter 12. All right. Now you can get back into it, and it's problematic because I have to open two different applications because I could not get my notes to copy over to eSword last night. So, bummer.
Okay.
So that's why I'm like, pausing, like, let me go look over here. Really sorry about that.
All right.
Limited here.
Okay. The call of Avram. And Yehovah said to Avram, "Go yourself out of your land, from your relatives and from your father's house, to a land which I show you. And I shall make you a great nation, and bless you, and make your name great, and you shall be a blessing."
All right, pause for a second.
Mm-hmm.
So I will magnify my kneeling to you. So that word, gadol, make great, means to magnify. So great nation is gadol, which means to magnify. And then if you remember, the blessing is that kneeling. It means to knee, to bring it down on a knee.
Okay.
And if you remember, curse means to lighten, to make like a less weight, so reduce it.
Mm-hmm.
That's coming up here in a minute. So.
All right. I'm just showing
Verse
those
3.
definitions. Okay. And I shall bless those who bless you, and curse him who curses you, and in all the clans of the Eretz, and in you all the clans of the Eretz shall be blessed.
Right. So the Jews have usurped this verse, and they say anyone who blesses the Jews will be blessed, and anyone who curses the Jews will be cursed.
Mm-hmm.
But Abraham is the first of the called out, the Ivri, aka Hebrew, that it has nothing to do with Jews or Judaism or anything like that, because Abraham brought forth Isaac, Isaac brought forth Jacob, Jacob brought forth Judah. So Abraham was 4 generations before Judah. So how was Abraham the first Jew? Which is what the Jews say, right? He was not a Jew. He didn't practice Judaism.
Right. How could he?
Yeah, exactly. How could he? And yes, it does say Adam there. Yes.
So this is saying, so it's not, maybe Eretz is not the right word there then, right? All the clans of the earth, because it says all the clans of the earth, but it's basically, but when I go and I look at what word for earth it's using,
it
right?
said Adamah, ground. Yes.
Right. So it's basically saying, it's like talking about man made from the ground, right?
Yep. Magnifying name of yours, an existing blessing, and I'll bless to you, and from curse of you, I'll curse. And who bless in you, I'll bless, all from join the ground. Yes. I mean, that's a little, it's a little hard in straight mechanical translation.
Yeah.
But yeah, it does say of the Adamah, right, the ground.
So Avram left as Yehovah had commanded him, and Lot went with him. And Avram was 75 years old when he set out from Haran.
Yep. And Haran means mountaineer because it was a mountainous terrain where the city was, and Lot was called the wrapping or the veil.
Covering. I'm seeing. Yeah, a veil covering.
Yep. It's not really important, but it's really cool when you start looking at the people's names. Like Sarai his wife, which you're going to read in the next verse. Sarai means princess.
Okay. And Avram took Sarai, his wife, and Lot his brother's son, and all their possessions they had gathered, and the beings whom they had acquired in Haran, and they set out for the land of Canaan, and they came to the land of Canaan. And Avram passed through the land to the place of Shechem.
Yep.
As far as the I need more drink. I can't so good right now. As far as Terebinth tree of Moreh, at the time of the Canaanites were in the land. At the time the Canaanites were in the land.
Yeah, and that's Eretz. So they pick and choose. Sometimes they put land, sometimes they put earth. So whenever it says like the ites, what does the scriptures have? I'm flipping back and forth again.
It says a Canaanite or inhabitant of Canaan by implication of peddler.
Right. So it says Canaanites because we
mercantile
are adapting the KJV Old English suffix of ites to say people of. Mm-hmm. But in scripture, it's usually the eem or ot. So it just actually makes plural the establisher of the city. So it's actually Kanani. Mm-hmm. So the plural of Canaan, Canaan, is what this is called. And if you remember, Canaan is the one who was cursed for whatever reason that happened to Noah when he was drunk and naked.
Right.
Okay. So it kind of gives you a reference of where the city came from. Because at the time, the Canaanites, which is Canaani, were in the land. So these are the descendants of Canaan.
Okay.
And yeah, Shechem, which means the back shoulder. So.
Okay. And Jehovah appeared to Avram and said, "To your seed I give this land." And he built there a slaughter place to Jehovah who had appeared to him. Yeah,
and I don't necessarily like the translation of slaughter place. We talked about this.
Yeah, well, we actually had last week it came up too.
It's a sacrifice location because it's not altar. Always. Yeah, it's altar. It's not always animals. Sometimes it's, harvest, plant life. So.
Right. Okay.
Pile of rocks, yo. It's pile of rocks.
And from there, and from there he moved to the mountain east of Beth El. And he pitched...
Oh my gosh. Yes, what? Keep going.
Is that... I don't know how to say that.
It's Beit El.
Beit El, okay.
Yeah, that's that tav. It's like so Beit El.
And he pitched his tent with Beit El on the west and Ai on the east, and he built there a slaughter place to Jehovah and called on the name of Jehovah.
Right. So this also goes against the people who only read Exodus to understand that his name was not revealed to them, because in Exodus chapter 3, it says, by my name, I am the deity of your fathers, of Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, and by my name was I not known to them. Well, yes, he was, but the problem is the punctuation, because it should have been a question mark. By my name was I not known to them, right? He was asking. He wasn't stating, they didn't know my name. Of course they knew his name. He built altars to his name and so on and so forth.
Right.
And the Beit El, so Beit means house. So it's house of El. And this place was not named until 3 generations later, when Yaakov, aka Jacob, wrestled with Elohim. And he says that, he's going to call this place Beit El. So there again, it wasn't named Beit El in the time of Abraham. Mm-hmm. But what Moshe is doing is he's kind of laying out a map for the people that are hearing this, right? So this is a recollection of the history. And that place Beit El, yeah, that's where Abraham was first established. And then 3 generations later, his family actually ended up moving there. So this is where it's like showing the people how Avraham moved from location to location, and then generations later, his family came back and established these locations.
Okay. And Avram set out, continuing toward the south. So.
And south seems to be the only cardinal direction that doesn't have a different meaning. Like if you remember, like the east means before,
Mm-hmm.
and the west means actually to the sea.
Mm-hmm.
And there's certain things like this where south is the only one that seems to have this literal cardinal direction of south, which I assume means outwardly, right?
Right.
With our with an assumption of the north being the inwardly to the pole.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's see. Does it say? Is there a word?
As far as the root,
Yeah.
it just, that's the thing. If you go to the ancient Hebrew, it literally just says south.
Meaning to be, from an unused root meaning to be parched.
Yeah, unused root.
Are
Are you using this unused root to define this root word?
That's it. That's all it says. There's nowhere else to go.
I know. It says it's
South
from an unused
country,
word. Yeah.
South country, region of southern, south.
Yep.
Let's see. Is there an ancient Hebrew?
Yep.
It just says south.
Exactly.
Southward.
Yep. That's
it doesn't even go over the little pictographs. But what do you know what these mean? Because this is the one for seed, right?
This is, yep, correct. Seed or continue, right? Like if you have generations, it's the seed continuing.
Uh-huh.
And Gimel means to travel, the foot, camel, Gimel, travel, taking your goods with you, and Bet means house. So the continuing of the traveling house.
Huh.
So if you want my perspective on this...
That's very vague.
If you want my perspective on this, the continuing of the traveling house, we spread out from the center.
Yeah.
That's my perspective, okay? I'm just saying. Because it goes along with the whole Pangea idea and how we all originated from the absolute north originally.
Mm-hmm.
And then the continents continue spreading south. They continue walking south.
That's interesting.
It's just a perspective.
Yeah.
But it makes sense.
Something to think about. All right. Avram and Sarai in Egypt.
Which was not there before.
Which was not there before. You know what's funny is it's just weird how they're arbitrarily in there. They're not even always at the beginning of a chapter.
Of a thought, yes.
It's just weird.
It gets even weirder because, we talked about this way back in Genesis 1, where they broke up a couple of verses off of chapter 1 and put it in 2 so they can separate the thought so you can't revert back to the first thought, right? They do this breaking where it breaks your mind, really, because you're like, oh, this is a new thing. This is a new chapter. They do the same thing with the separation of the books of, AKA New Testament, Old Testament, right? Mm-hmm. They're saying, oh, that's the old stuff. This is the new stuff. Don't worry about that old stuff. So you'll see chapters that will begin with therefore. What? Therefore from what? What's the therefore? Where you have to read the previous chapter to understand what the therefore is there for.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying. They cause this confusion, and I mean the title headings are sometimes okay, but sometimes it shows a excuse me, in the heading, it actually says the opposite of what the contents are. They leave it vague enough where it says don't do this, and okay, let's say there's a chapter about murder or whatever. Okay. Now this is vague. This isn't in there, but let's say there's a chapter about murder and how much it says do not murder this way or don't murder that way. But the sentence of the title up top will say, to murder, right? It'll just say to murder. And if you just read the heading, you're like, oh, well, I guess there's something about we should go murder,
Mm-hmm.
But it's like when you read the articles from NASA, right? They'll have an article heading that says something as if it's absolutely so, but then you read the article, they say theory, they say postulation, they say idea, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But in the heading they claim it as if it's just so.
All right. 1 second. 1 second.
All right.
All right. And please shut my door, darling. Thank you. All right. Sorry. Answering children questions.
You're streaming behind a door? That's
No.
not usual. You moved your computer?
I have a room. I moved my whole setup into the spare bedroom, so now I can go in a room and shut the door and
Very cool.
yeah.
Very nice. Yeah,
I had
kick
to
my
do
wife-
that because it doesn't work to make everybody else be quiet while you're streaming. It just doesn't work.
Right. I kicked my wife out of my room when we started here in the morning because she's not ready to get up, you know, because it's Shabbat, like sleeping day. And she just goes, she goes out of the room. Too noisy in here. All right.
All right. Okay. And a scarcity of food came to be in the land, and Avram went to Mitzrayim to dwell there, for the scarcity of food was severe in the land.
Right. So the Eretz is land here. And it says that Abraham sheets, like he spreads out to Mitzrayim.
Mm-hmm.
Mitzrayim is the people of, you know, a group named after the man, Mitzrayim. So Mitzrayim was a descendant of hold on. It says it in there somewhere.
It says Upper
Golly,
and Lower
like-
Egypt.
Yeah, but the person, Mitzrayim,
Oh,
was in, I think it's a descendant of Canaan or of Ham.
yeah, I can't remember. There's too many already for me to keep
Okay.
track.
I'm just saying, like people need to like realize that these are not, you know, they didn't come away from the ark and then they ran into this city over here and this city over here and blah 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 blah. No, these all came out of the descendants of those who came off the ark,
Right.
and the name of these cities goes right back to it. So it's not like, you know, the people who got off the ark were one type of people and they ran into the city of Egypt that was already there. No, these are the descendants of those who got off the boat.
All right. And it came to be when he was close to entering Mitzrayim that he said to Sarai, his wife, "See, I know that you are a beautiful woman to look at.
Hey, baby.
And it shall be when the Mitzrites see you, that they shall say, 'This is his wife,' and they shall kill me, but let you live." What? "Please
Yep.
say you are my sister, so that it shall be well with me for your sake, and my life be spared because of you."
Yep.
And
And just FYI, he's not lying. She's actually his half sister. So even though she is his sister, she's also his wife. But he's like, I know how these people are. Like, they'll end up killing me to have you because you're so hot, right?
Mhm.
And so he's like, when we go into the town, we're brother and sister, which means that I'm still allowed to protect you as your brother,
Mhm.
but they won't go after me to try to get to you.
Right.
And by the way, this is Abraham lying to an enemy, and it gets blessed. So these people that spiral, that say that you're never, ever, 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 ever supposed to lie, I disagree with that.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, though.
Right. And it came to be when Avram came to Mitzrayim that the Mitzrites saw the woman, that she was very beautiful. And the Pharaoh's officials saw her and praised her before Pharaoh, and the woman was taken to Pharaoh's house. And
Pharaoh is the unbound. So if you remember, like, the bounding and the veiling of Lot, Pharaoh is the opposite of that. He's unbound. So he's like, you know, if you piss him off, he'll go crazy on you. You know, he's unbound.
Ah, okay. And he treated Avram well for her sake, and he had sheep and cattle and male donkeys and male and female servants and female donkeys and camels.
Yeah, when I was literally translating it, I was like, maybe it's not male donkeys, maybe it's the drink that they made of the froth of the wine, because it's a weird connection, that word donkey to the boiling froth. And for the female donkey, it literally means the gift. So that's the female of gift. So that's interesting. So female donkey is a gift.
And the KJV version's funny, not gonna lie.
Yeah.
And he asses and men servants, maid servants, and she asses.
We, they asses. Right. Yeah.
All right. But Yehovah plagued Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because of Sarai, Avram's wife.
Okay, so plague literally can just mean he touched Pharaoh, by the way.
Let's see. Plagues. To blow, also by implication, a spot. Plague, sore, stricken, stripe, stroke, wound.
From.
Primitive root, properly to touch, that is, lay the hand upon. Euphemistically, to lie with a woman.
Yeah, so beating a woman and lying with a woman is not the same thing.
Right. By implication, to reach, figuratively, violently, to strike, punish, destroy.
So it's based on the context only.
Yeah.
So it literally could say, and Yehovah touched Pharaoh and his house.
And Pharaoh called Avram and said, "What is this you have done to me? Why did you not inform me that she was your wife?" Well, how did he find out?
Because he was touched by Yehovah. That's why I don't think it's plagued there.
That doesn't make sense.
Like, if he had a touch from the Creator, right? He gets a download from the Creator.
Right.
And he realizes, oh crap, I took this dude's wife?
Yeah. Okay. Why did you say she is my sister, and so I was going to take her for my wife? Look, here is your wife, take her and go. And Pharaoh commanded his men concerning him, and they sent him away with his wife and all he had.
Now, what does that mean with all he had? If you look back up, when he took Sarai to be his wife, he gave Abraham cattle and donkeys and servants, and it's 16, verse 16.
Okay.
So he treated Avram well for her sake, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then he's like, dude, why didn't you tell me she was your wife? And I mean, let's face it. It's because he knew how those people were.
Right.
They take what they want, and if Avram's in the way, then the only way to get to her, by their legal terms, is to kill him.
Right.
So he spared his life by lying to the enemy, and he got blessed out of it. And I mean, there's a lot of scripture that says, do not have unjust weights and measures towards your neighbor or towards your brother. But it says that if you find an animal and you didn't see how it died, you can sell it to a stranger, but you can't sell it to a neighbor or a brother. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's saying that you have different actions for different people. So he out of desperation, because of the plague, or the hunger, right? There's a famine in the land.
Mm-hmm.
That he goes over to his enemy to, I hate to say take advantage, but it really is. But it's the same thing as us living in our society, right? Like, we don't agree with this society at all, but we take advantage of, income by, green pieces of paper, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
Even though we don't agree with them, we have to act with them differently than the way that, you know, they would act towards each other. And it's the same thing as I will treat you, Karen, my friend, differently than some dude whose intentions I don't know.
Right.
Like, there's some things I will not reveal to that stranger, you know?
Mm-hmm. Which is smart.
Yeah.
All right.
So I'm done with the translations. We can go farther, but I didn't translate more than 2 chapters.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So, what does that mean? If we
I
go
don't know.
farther, we're just winging it.
I mean,
it's a live translation.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to, I mean, I could put some perspective into it, but, you know, I don't want to say, well, this means da-da-da, and then you hit the definition and it's a completely different word that was translated the same as a different word.
Right.
So, I mean, if you want to hold off till next week to continue, we can.
Okay.
And then I can hit up, you know, I can try to knock out like 3 or 4 chapters next time, you know, in case it's a fast read. It's just, you know,
Right.
you people in the audience, you don't understand how many hours I put into these lessons.
Yeah. No, it's cool. If we can stop now and continue next week, that's an hour. Well, almost an hour, not counting our technical difficulties.
Yeah. Sorry about that all. I mean, technology, you know, it's hit or miss. But yeah, I also want to like let people know, there's a friend of mine who's in the chat right now where he came up with this idea of doing a one-on-one. So we connected via email and then connected by Skype, and then he gave me a donation so that I would, not so that I would. He gave me a donation because I sat with him for, the idea was for an hour, but it ended up being 5 hours. But so that I could show him how to properly set up the eSword so that he could study for himself. We talked about tsetse, which that's going to come much later in our study. But we talked about the bare bones Torah information. And if anybody else is interested in doing something like that, you can email me, justjackflatearth@gmail.com. And we'll try to work it out to where I can take time. Just FYI, I will not be doing it on Shabbat because this is my day of rest. Even though I do these studies with you in Austin, to add somebody else in the mix would really be
That'd be too much.
Consuming. Not only that, but if they were to donate for my time, it kind of would feel like work. So I want to avoid doing this on Shabbat.
There you go.
All right. And he said that the Just Jack Flat Earth at PayPal didn't work, but I don't know if it was something that he was doing, but I gave him a different link. So if you try to donate to me at justjackflatearth@gmail.com and it doesn't work, let me know and I'll give you a different email that does work.
Oh, that's not your email for your PayPal? I thought it was.
It is. It's supposed to be linked to it. There's 2 emails that's supposed to be linked to it, but I don't know why it wasn't working.
Oh. Well,
So,
you should give me a PayPal link then that I could just share the PayPal link. Put that in my Skype chat, and then I'll put it in the description, and then it will be there every week.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah, sorry for anybody who's trying to donate to me. But yeah, I mean, again, we're just looking at this as a bare bones Hebrew study of scriptures. We're not getting into philosophies any more than what the scripture says. We're not reading into the scripture, which is what a lot of religions do, and we're not extrapolating out of scriptures other than when I say, this is just Jack, right? This is my idea.
We always give a disclaimer that says, hey, this is just what I think. Take it for what it is.
Yep. I mean, if you, excuse me, where I'm going with these ideas, though, I mean, they're not illogical. I'm not like, how can I fit my philosophy into the scripture, which is what religion does. I do the opposite. When like we were looking at that root word. Well, this means this means this means this. Together, it seems like it's meaning this. Like it continues to travel the house, right? So, and it means south. So for me, it just means it expands out southerly.
That's what it sounds like.
Yeah. I mean, it could mean something else, but that's between you and the creator to, hash it out.
Right. Think about it.
I like this story of, or this account, I should say. Story makes it sound like false narrative. This account of Babylon really shows you why so many different nations have the same technologies, the same history, et cetera, et cetera. Well, if this account of Babylon is true, it makes perfect sense. The way that the polytheism worship, which is multi-deity worship, if you go back to the generations, and I think we talked about this last week, the name of some of the people in the generations are the name of deities in other lands, as if it was carried over.
Right.
Like these ancestors of theirs, they treated it like deity. And remember, the word El is just a mighty one. It could be of celestial or of physical. So right. I hope somebody got something out of this study.
Yeah. Now, I'm assuming that, does it talk more about Babel and the Tower of Babel later on? Because that was actually a lot shorter than I thought it would be, as much as people talk about
Exactly. And
Babel.
That's the thing, is like you have other stories that relate back to that same story. Like there's oh my gosh, I'm brain farting right now. Oh my gosh,
well,
what's the word? So there's a lot of ancient stories that seem to go with this Babylonian story, especially with Nimrod. If you remember last week, we said Nimrod became a mighty hunter before Jehovah, and he was the one that established the building of the city of Babylon. So there's a lot of stories that talk about Nimrod and by other archetypes that are very similar and probably the same person, but the names were changed because of the scattering of the people. So there are other stories of the quote-unquote sun god who died and became the sun. His mother became the queen of heaven, the queen of fertility, aka Ishtar, Easter, they're all the same entity, Isis. Then you have the sun gods, Ra, Mithra, Zeus. All these are the same archetype, as if they came from this same story that was established in Babylon through Nimrod. So with the continuation of peoples expanding out from Babylon, and again, this land of Shinar, it was probably a hub. It's large enough. The space was large enough for them to build a giant building, but it also could be like where things started to break apart from the flood that previously happened, and the continents floating away from one another, et cetera, et cetera.
Interesting.
And that's if Pangea was a thing, which I think it was.
And what you're saying about like the different, like Zeus and stuff being, and Ishtar and all these different like names, archetypes, right? I wonder if anybody's done, and this is probably a really ignorant question, probably somebody's seen it that's watching. Has anybody done a thing where they take like the Greek gods and the Egyptian characters and the biblical characters, and do they try to like align them
Put
across
them all together? Yeah.
And find out if they're all...
I think Skiba did that. Rob Skiba. I think he did a study of that where you can trace like all of them back to... Now he goes on the perspective of these are fallen angels, and then all the families expanded out of them. but he does show you the comparisons with all these different archetypes of the pantheon and sun god worship, etc. And so, like, so for instance, people think that they're looking at a picture of Mary, Joseph, and Jesus, right? Or even if it's just Mary and Jesus. And then if you look up the title of these paintings or pictures, it's they call it the Madonna now. If you look at the original titles for these paintings and pictures, they'll tell you that it's actually Ishtar and Nimrod. Not Nimrod, sorry. Second generation Tammuz. So Ishtar and Tammuz comes from that Babylonian worship, but then they just say that it's Mary and Jesus. And if some people have done study in Tartaria, and like there's big people and little people and stuff like that. It's not actually a woman and a baby. It's actually a giant woman and a regular sized man, stuff like that. But the halo thing, people have to get the concept, like, where do we see halos in nature? Where's the only place we see halos in nature?
On celestial bodies.
Right. Especially on the sun, right? And that halo, people have to understand, halo is a symbol for the sun god. That's what it literally means. So anytime you see any pictures with halos or the sunburst going around their head, it's based on sun god worship. It has nothing to do with the characters that follow the creator. It has to do with the characters who establish themselves as deities.
Right.
I mean, that's why it is a sunburst and a starburst, right? Because they're looking at the celestial bodies as deities.
Right, yeah. And
so that's just some perspective, especially for people who are still in the religion trying to figure out what's scripture and what's not. That's a very important part to all the depictions of these haloed characters are sun god worship. Admittedly, you just have to look into the history of it.
Right.
It's like Jupiter. Okay, so Jupiter wasn't the planet originally. Jupiter was the sun originally, and then they changed it to be a planet. So Jupiter is Yahweh Peter. So people who call on Yahweh, they're actually calling on Jupiter. They just don't know it. And it's been changed into Christian theology as the name for the creator, even though it's not. But they put this statue up in the Royal Cathedral of the Catholics, and people walk by the statue and they kiss the feet so much that the toes have eroded off. They pray to this statue.
So
and they say that this is the statue of the father of the church, aka Peter, even though it's been well known and documented that this is a statue of Jupiter. But Yahweh Peter, we can say, oh, well, this is Peter. This is what they do. So there are people that are going in there and they're worshiping this idol of Jupiter, and they think that they're worshiping the father of the church, which is not okay either. But they think they're worshiping Peter, the first pope, quote unquote. That's not scripture. That's the religion part.
All right.
So, yeah, this all comes out of sun god worship. It's all Babylonian. Same as the name of God. God is the money deity of Babylon, and so on. It gets crazy.
Yes.
Sun god halo, sun dog halo. Very good critical inception. That's a good perspective. Sun god, sun dog halo. That's interesting. Yeah. All right.
All right. Awesome. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining Jack and myself for another episode of Anti-Religious Scripture Study.
Still flat.
Still flat, still motionless.
That's
and
right.
If you're able to join us in October 23rd and 24th for Flattoberfest 2021, you can go to flatearthfestivals.com to get your tickets and see information. And
Yeah,
that's
you have to go to Flattoberfest because then you're saving other people's life.
sure, I'll go with that.
Yeah, it's just like they make these claims like if you don't do this and if you don't do that, you're not
Right.
saving people's lives. So you got to come to Flattoberfest to save people's lives, man.
You have to come to Flattoberfest to improve the quality of your own life. I will say that.
That's true. That is true.
Yeah.
Every one of these things are very edifying. So definitely.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Later.
It's still flat.